Thank you. And Mr. Vidal Martinez. I just have a few housekeeping things that we need to cover real quickly. The standard procedure, of course, is to find your devices and shut them off. We are live streaming this through channel 26. Of course, we don't need any interference with any of our electronics here, okay? The other thing that's important is that our facility to my right and to your left, should you need it. Also, if you need to take a phone call, out those doors would be the place to do it, okay? So, so we want to keep this as quietly as we can. As you notice here, we got the acoustics here are quite different. So, prior to us getting started as well, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, or you should know now, and I'll tell you, is that we're going to ask you to hold your applause until the end of our forum here, okay? That way everybody is entitled to listen closely to these candidates and not miss anything. So if you guys will respect that, I would greatly appreciate it. No applause until afterwards. Of course, there won't be any, I hate to have to bring this up, but any heckling or anything of that nature there, you will be asked to leave. So, without further ado here, what we'll do is if you guys will stand for our invocation. I've asked the Reverend Dr. Jason Nelson to lead us in that invocation. We'll ask if you will remain standing because we will have our board member, Tom Bartley, to, and his family to lead us in those pledges.
Let's pray. God, we come before you this evening, first of all, acknowledging that you are the creator, the giver and sustainer of life. You created us in your image. You formed us in our mother's womb. You saved us by grace and faith through the precious blood of Christ. And you have called us, you've empowered us and employed us to do good works in this world, to be your hands and feet, your agents and ambassadors of hope and healing. We also come before you this evening acknowledging that every good and perfect gift, as your word says, comes from you. It comes from above. As we pause to give you thanks for all the things that you continue to rain down upon our lives, things like life and love and laughter, family, friendship, and faith, freedom, those who you empower to fight for freedom. We also thank you for community and unity. We pray right now for a special blessing upon every person gathered here today and upon those who have stepped forward in the very hostile area, an arena of conflict and heated debates, and we ask that you give us a spirit of wisdom so we all can collectively and individually discern to decide your will and your way for our lives. We thank you for this country. We ask for your hand of protection to be upon us all and upon those who are fighting for the oppressed and fighting for those who've been discarded and disregarded by society. We thank you for all the things that lead us up to this day, and we celebrate all that Christ has done for us this day and as we celebrate through the Holy Week. And we pray all this in his sacred, beautiful, and precious name, the name of Jesus, and in the power of the Holy Spirit. And everyone said, amen.
Tom, would you come? Also, it is quite appropriate if you served in the military and honorably discharged, you can render a hand salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Young conservatives, we are growing them young. Now, to get on with our program, I've asked Suzanne Feather to introduce to you our moderator for today. Suzanne is the director of our national board, the Pachyderms. We're honored to have her here. I sit on that board as well. We've got members of various Pachyderm clubs that are here as well. We welcome you and thank you also. Customarily, what we do is we usually take the time to introduce our dignitaries that are here with us. But in the light of time, we won't have an opportunity to do that. But we do recognize you guys. We do thank you guys for being here. And if you will, just give one round of applause to our dignitaries that are here. Thank you very much. Suzanne.
Wow, this is great. So sorry that you guys have to stand, but what a great turnout. I just want to say that the Greater Tomball Area Pachyderm Club is a part of the larger National Federation of Pachyderm Clubs, and each of our clubs strives to become the integration organization among the various Republican organizations through education of their members. And so we want to give as much time to our candidates tonight to speak, and that is the reason your applause is asked to be limited until the end. It is my honor to introduce native Texan and Fox 22 Special Projects reporter Greg Groogan. Greg has received over 200 journalism awards. I'll not recite the whole 200, but I'll kind of group some of them together. He has received 28 Long Star Emmys. The Houston Press has made him the Journalist of the Year at least 3 times. 38 Associated Press awards, the National Education Writers Award, a 7th-time winner, 7 times he has won, the Edward R. Murrow Award. Greg broke into the TV business in the Texas border town of Laredo, where lots of activity is going on right now. He is a graduate of the University of Texas Plan II Honors Program. After he then left to go to Alaska, where he, for a better part of a year, he was covering the Exxon Valdez oil spill. He returned to Texas to cover state politics as a Capitol Bureau chief. Today, he hosts the weekly political talk show, What's Your Point, on Channel 26, Fox 26, local Fox 26. We are honored to have Greg, and it is my great pleasure to introduce him. We are in for a real treat. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I've been on television a long time, but I'm never more nervous than in a room like this. I see a lot of friends, a lot of people I'd like to be friends with. Like to welcome our Fox 26 audience watching on our website. This is an incredibly important election. I want to say this, we have 2 extraordinarily high-quality candidates here. I respect them both. I've talked to them both. And I expect they respect each other, and we're going to just go along that theme. No disruptions. We've got law enforcement here, and if not, Mike Knox is here, and he still has his skills. Ray Hunt will be on his hip. If that doesn't work, we'll sit Kubosh and former council members starting on him. Anyway, I'm going to read the rules now. We're going to get underway. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves. This is a time for giving background, information, work experience, life experience. Once the questions begin, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Each opposing candidate will have a 1 minute for response or rebuttal or their own views. and we may do a little modification there, and I'll let the candidates know. The first candidate to answer the question will then have 30 seconds for rebuttal. I'm the moderator. I have discretion, and then we're going to have a 3-minute close for both of these candidates. Are we ready to go? The all-important issue of public safety. By a magnitude of 5 or more to 1, deteriorating public safety and runaway crime are by far the most critical issues for Harris County voters. If elected, what is your plan to restore law and order to a massive community where residents across the spectrum are genuinely and justifiably afraid? And because I know Vidal has great home training, we're going to start with the lady candidate, and I'm going to guarantee you equal time. Alex, take it away. Are we doing introductions? Or are we going straight to the questions? I went straight to the questions. I've already blown it. So you guys can settle on that first question, think about it. Let's start with introductions. Did I just not read that? We were going to do that. Alex, go ahead, your first 3 minutes.
All right, good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's obviously a great crowd. A lot of people fired up about beating Lena Hidalgo. So my name is Alex Mueller, and when I'm county judge, I want to restore our county and make it the county where people want to flock to, where we get the best and the brightest who want to start their careers, build their families, build their businesses, because that's why my husband and I moved here. You know, Harris County for so many years was the model of the American dream, a true meritocracy. And like all of you all, you know, my family and I, we've seen the last few years the devastating impact of these policies. We have a crisis in our streets, a crisis in our jails, and a crisis in our elections. And that's why this election is so important, because our community can't take another 4 years of these failed progressive policies. You know, so today, you as the voter, you have to choose. Who do you think can lead our county? Who can end the corruption and restore integrity back to make Harris County the beacon that it was before, the true model, the representation of the best of America? So, because we may never get another chance, why I want to just impart, this is the time we have to stand our ground and fight. And I'm hoping to earn that opportunity. And when you ask me, hey, political outsider, what can you do? How can you do this? I'd say just look what I did in this primary. In the primary, I was a political outsider. I was outspent 3-1. I had no insider relationships, no funding. All I had was the ability to get people excited around good conservative governance. And with that, we built a broad coalition, and we beat the establishment, and we beat them by a wide margin. I have over 10 law enforcement groups that have gotten behind me and said, we trust you to tackle crime. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough for fire to weigh in. We typically don't see fire weigh in on county elections, but things are that devastating. Not only have we had strong first responder support, but grassroots leader, the business coalition, proud to have Mattress Mac, and many people in this room. I'm the only candidate with multiple county and city officials. Very proud to have the support of Steve Raddick, who's in the back, as well as Mike Knox. That's when I say, can you build a broad coalition? Now, what about your qualifications? Can you lead? All right, I am a political outsider. I spent my career in the military, right? So I have organized before, and I spent the next 6 years working oil and gas finance. I started my career at West Point. From West Point, I served in Afghanistan. I proved I can be calm in a crisis. I dismantled IEDs on my hands and knees. I can perform under pressure. And I'm hoping to earn your vote. Thank you very much, and God bless America.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vidal Martinez. I've been in Houston for 47 years, since 1975, when John Lindsay began a 44-year run of 3 consecutive conservative Harris County Republican judges until 2018. I have also been a person who has had direct responsibility in the 3 areas that are responsible for Harris County. Texas Constitution in 1836 set up 254 counties. Every one of them has 4 precincts and a county judge. They're in charge of 3 things. 1, public safety. 2, public health. 3, transportation / which is really emergency management. In each one of those areas in the last 47 years, I've had a chance to be part of that. I was a federal prosecutor when I first came to Houston. I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I put bad guys away. I know how to solve this crime wave that we have. Later, I was honored to be State Bar Chairman. I was the head of all 90,000 lawyers in the state of Texas. I've seen it from the governance side and from the prosecution side. In the public health arena, I've been 30 years on the Methodist Hospital board. There's 18 members of the board. I'm 3rd in seniority now. It's #1 hospital in the state of Texas, number 16 out of 6,000 in the United States. It's got a budget about the size of the counties, and I've served on every governance, capital spending, finance, audit, every leadership committee on dealing with those billions of dollars there. On the transportation side, let's go back to 1997 and 98. I was on the Greater Houston Partnership Board, our chairman, our Chamber of Commerce here. I was also your port commissioner, one of the port commissioners on the Port Commission. During that time, I was testifying for you for the $8 billion for the I-45 expansion. It takes 30 years, 20 and 30 years to get that money. I was your community responsible person that was there testifying, and we got that money. And we've now given back that money basically to the state or put it at risk. These are direct first seat responsibilities. I've never run for office. I've always given to the Republican Party. I was a delegate in '84 in Dallas. I was a delegate in '88 in New Orleans, and I was in '92. I was a vice chairman of the convention here. I have served in every single role, but they have now failed us. This crime wave, making us not the first word from Houston. We have now 4 red alerts in the public health without any sort of tent hospital fiasco, and the I-45 expansion. You're going to hear tonight a compare and contrast, and I look forward to talking to you tonight more. Vidal Martinez.
Well done, both of you. As I said earlier, deteriorating public safety and runaway crime, by far, and I think everybody agrees, the most critical issue for Harris County voters. If elected, what is your plan to restore law and order to a massive community where residents across the spectrum are genuinely afraid? Ray Hunt said to me the other day, load your pistols, lock your doors, they're on the street. And he's a straight shooter. Alex, let's start with you.
So in tackling crime, as a candidate, there's only so much we can do, but I've tried to take action even though we're only a candidate. So the first thing that I've already done is I filed an amicus brief to challenge the O'Donnell consent decree. O'Donnell consent decree is the legal linchpin or justification for creating this revolving door. When we take back Commissioner's Court and have a 3-2 majority, that won't say Alex Mueller, that'll say Harris County. And when we do that, that'll change the legal backdrop. We'll be able to get rid of the Justice Administration Department, which is this essentially research arm that, as we all see the body count piling up, is putting out taxpayer-funded reports saying bail reform's working. That's not the problem. We all know bail reform isn't. So the first thing is changing the legal backdrop to shut the revolving door. The second is funding. As county judge, that really is the impact that you have. Your funding priorities reflect your actual priorities. And when I started digging into our county budget, the first thing that was apparent jumps off the page is the shift. When we had John Lindsay, who I'm proud to have endorsed me, and Steve Raddick, law enforcement was almost a third of the general fund. Now, even though our budget's doubled in a few years, it's only 15%. So our same commissioners that can sit there and deny over 80% of law enforcement requests and have fun to add new bureaucrats, new departments, they're the ones that always say that there's not money for actual boots on the ground. Actual boots on the ground are what we haven't had, and things are so bad that our DA, who's a Democrat, has had to go and plead now twice. It took constables showing up en masse to make sure that we got prosecutors, because there is a backlog of over 100,000 cases. Not only do we have to fund, we have to start running night courts. We can start doing plea deals. We have to get through this backlog. Law and order has to be number one, and I'm committed to restoring that. Thank you.
Vidal, because this issue is so critical, take 2 full minutes.
Thank you. January 3rd, 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to gavel in with Cactus Jack and Tom Ramsey, and the first item at 10 o'clock is going to be to kill the bail bond reform settlement. It is, as described by Alex, it is the fundamental basis that's caused this crime wave. We're not known as Houston, you know, the first word from the moon or the energy capital or the biggest medical center now. We're known as the crime wave, as a murder capital. The second thing I'm going to do is return the money to the constables, the reserve funds that were taken from them by the Supreme Administrator. Then we're going to give the sheriffs the second half of the pay raise that Ed Emmett promised and hasn't been done for over 3 years. You start putting the sheriff's department, a third of them are gone out of the 5,000. So we're going to be in a position now of refunding, not defunding law enforcement, and we're going to kill the bail bond reform. Instead of this decarceration program, we're going to put criminals with multiple crimes back into jail. Another thing that we're going to look at is under Chapter 71 under the government code, under our state statutes, we have bunches of agencies, police agencies. We're going to start talking to the University of Houston police. We're going to start talking to the sheriff. We're going to have the police, the constables. We're going to have the airport police, everyone under an interlocal agreement so that you, the citizens, they can basically, whenever there's a crime that's occurred, the closest GPS law enforcement person that's there will be there within 3 minutes to your location. We have about 29 different law enforcement agencies here. The final one is the DA. Put her on a performance plan. You want 60 DAs, give you 15, 90 days later, we'll see how much you reduce the backlog. Those are specific things on January 3rd by lunch.
Alex, 1 minute to extend.
No, I think with law and order, at this point, actually, most of Harris County is on the same page. You saw Senator John Whitmire have a press conference. That's very unusual now with David Cuevas, the sheriff deputies have endorsed. When you're talking about issues, 2,700 calls is what our sheriff deputies are responding to on average a day per deputy. So we have to dramatically expand the size of our academy classes. Right now, we're only growing about 60 deputies per year. As long as there's widespread lawlessness, we can't ladder our way out. So working hard to grow our academy classes, strengthen our infrastructure, and then start doing long-range planning. We're so underfunded, we're not going to fix this in 1 year. Our county only does 1 year budgeting. We do not do long-term planning. They've been critically starved of their vehicles. Constables have to walk around with a bag of keys to find a working vehicle. So I want to partner with every single department, and I agree with Vidal about doing central dispatch. That'll lead to some efficiencies. Thank you.
Everybody, the Pachyderm Club has asked us to hold our applause, and I know these are great candidates and we want to cheer them on, but we'll have that opportunity at the end, so please be respectful. Vidal, 1 minute to extend on the issue of crime.
How embarrassing is this murder rate for all of you? It's about time, and they don't care. This county judge came in here with her George Soros, AOC, left, progressive, decarceration, defund law enforcement. We have got to stop that. We're 7.5 million people in this area. We're 4.7 million in our county. How about we start acting as the third largest county in America? And how about if we start acting as the biggest county in Texas and take care of our children, our families, our parents, and the public? We have to get back to a mode where law enforcement doesn't feel like every time they're exercising their duty, they think they're making a career decision. We need to take care of our men in blue, and we need to do it right now.
I'm going to go to another public safety question. Harris County leadership has been sued in federal court by their own peace officers for refusing to address demonstrably dangerous and deadly conditions inside the grossly understaffed Harris County Jail. A female detention officer raped, a special needs inmate beaten to death, thousands of inmate-on-inmate assaults, hundreds of assaults on detention officers, rampant drug use. I could go on. If elected, what would you do to resolve the crisis and ultimately regain control? I'm going to start with you, Vidal.
Pretty pathetic situation in the jail. It's also pathetic what's happened with the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department has about 5,000 people. A third of them have retired or resigned because they didn't get their pay increase or because things have become so untenable. Another third is looking to retire or resign by the end of this year. We wind up with a skeleton crew in the Sheriff's Department. And why is that? It's money. They can go elsewhere. Councilmember Kubash right there, who supports me, and where's Mike Knox? He's here somewhere too. They just recently, a couple weeks ago, raised the salaries for HPD. But an HPD HPD patrolman now makes $10,000 more than a sheriff officer. We can't do that. We can't hire. Nobody wants to come for the Sheriff's Department. So the way you fix this is you get them funded, and you get the second half of that raise as the first one, then do a comparable study with all the big counties and see where we are so that we can employ them. And as law enforcement, we shouldn't have such disparity in our community. And this court, this commissioner's court, doesn't care that we're so out of whack, if you will, on our pay for our sheriffs. And that's who runs the jails. And that's who does most of the investigations in our community. It's a matter of money and will and changing this decarceration, defund law enforcement era.
Alex, 2 minutes.
So since Lena's administration has taken office, our sheriff deputies, the inmate to guard ratio, we've not complied with state law. If you want to ask how is a person left alone for 15 minutes to be brutally raped, it's when you don't have the proper inmate to guard ratio. So we're critically starving of resources to the point where we don't have enough guards to actually produce law and order. Yesterday, David Cuevas, head of the Sheriff Deputies Union, said, listen, we can't protect inmates, we can't protect ourselves. So it's not even just the pay, we don't have enough boots on the ground. And that's really what I've been advocating since I launched my campaign. Fully funding doesn't just mean competitive pay, which is part of it, but you have to actually have enough people to do the job. We don't do proactive policing, and in our jails, you're so far from that where we can't even guarantee the safety of those working inside. When people know they're threatened, it's very hard to find people to fill those billets. The other things that happens, because they're so critically short-staffed, is they get locked in. You don't get to go. Oh, you thought you were working a 12-hour shift? No, you have to stay here. We're critically short. So increasing that manpower, returning law and order even within our jails is how you attract the talent to want to do this, and making as well their competitive pay. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask this question. Any rebuttal on that, or should we move to another?
Just real quick, won't even take a minute. What kind of situation are we in when our sheriffs are suing commissioners court? Okay? We're going to stop that. We're not going to have an adversarial system with our deputy sheriffs and law enforcement with county commissioners court. And I'm going to do everything I can with Commissioners Cagle and Ramsey to settle that lawsuit, dispose of it, and get us back onto funding the sheriff's department. And that's who sued the commissioners court. It was the sheriff's deputies who did that. Thank you.
I'm going to work with the Precinct 2 Commissioner because I think we're going to take that seat as well. Thank you.
Flood control. In the wake of Hurricane Harvey, the most damaging natural disaster in American history, billions of local and federal dollars have been invested to make Harris County more resilient against future storms. In the past 3 years, many believe the long-standing guideline of focusing on the worst first has been displaced, rightly, wrongly, by a policy of reparations for areas which claim they've been historically shortchanged flood mitigation investment. If elected, what would be your guiding principle in this critical process? Start with you, Vidal.
August 2018, we passed the biggest bond election in the history of Harris County, $2.5 billion. It had several years of study before it came. It had engineering studies. It had environmental impact study. It had social engineering studies. Everything that came right before the vote came with 191 specific projects. North Houston, listen to this. Specific projects in your area mapped out, and they were there with a dollar amount that added to $2.5 billion. When we passed that bond election, it was a contract with you all over the county on where these projects were going to go and what we were going to spend them on. 191 projects. We have now finished 18 of them over 3 years later, having commenced, including those 18, on 50 of them. Okay, and then now we're trying to renegotiate back inside the Beltway. These commissioners' court don't care about anything above Beltway 8. And so they're trying to move the money around, move the projects around. They literally are taking a couple $100 million here and moving it into a precinct and just leaving the money sitting there in that county commissioner's precinct. We've got to get back to the original plan. We've got to go back, and we're out of whack too. They borrowed over $1 billion against that fund, and that's the matching component that comes from the feds. The Chronicle says it's $1.4 billion. We don't have that money sitting there because they've used it for everything else in their social left woke programs. So we're in trouble, and we got with the bonding community. It's also a contract with Wall Street, and we have not met that contract either to you, the taxpayers, especially the north of Harris County, or to Wall Street that sold our bonds for us. Let's get back to the same plan.
Alex, 2 minutes.
So in the bond where we paid $2.5 billion of your taxpayer money, we're actually short roughly $1 billion. The reason you hear a lot of different numbers floating is because Rodney and Lena, they want to add projects. They have not changed our current projects. Adrian Garcia tried to, he did not get the vote. So we're roughly 20% through those 191 projects, and every week in Commissioner's Court, they actually do provide an update. But what is scary, and I do agree with, is the fact they are trying to switch them. I believe in worst first, but what does worst first mean? If you ask Rodney and Adrian, it's worst first plus a social equity adjustment. I define worst first by number of instances of flooding over a given period of time. And that's what they did before with a combination of shovel ready. We had very good news a couple weeks ago where HUD approved the first step of unlocking $750 million. Before we can get that money, we have to have our plan of distribution approved. So that's really where my effort and focus will be, because quite simply, we cannot afford to fund flood control entirely on our own. We're the petrochemical hub of the entire country. It is not just our problem. And when you look at what's going to happen with flood control, not only do we have this $5 billion of projects we're trying to fund, but thankfully the Army Corps of Engineers is looking at doing a tunnel system. That tunnel system is going to be another $5 to $6 billion, which we'll have to fund 25 to 50% of. So when you start doing the long-range planning, you realize how incredibly important it's going to be to form a real task force, not a Lena Hidalgo task force of people sitting around talking about social equity preferences and preferred pronouns, but actual engineers and academic experts to go around and say, what are the legislative asks? And then you get with every congressional representative and state delegation, say, this is your ask from the state. The state has over $300 million of funding we're eligible for, and gosh knows there's sure plenty with HUD. Thank you very much.
Vidal, 30 seconds to close or rebut.
Nothing, Dad.
Alex, you ready to move on?
Sure.
Transportation. On the topic of mobility, no issue is more crucial than the multi-billion-dollar proposed expansion of I-45. The current Harris County Democratic leadership has litigated with Texas DOT over current plans, which they claim disrupt and displace predominantly minority neighborhoods and their residents. Congressman Dan Crenshaw and many others have warned that Harris County and Greater Houston are in danger of losing that federal investment. If elected, what course would you pursue to preserve the project? And I'm going to start with you, Alex.
So I think what happened with I-45 is some activists got in front first, and they really mismanaged and mismessaged it. So a lot of people got upset without really understanding, and part of it's even just the marketing. There is one environmental report, but really it's multiple projects. Right now, segment 3, which is even a confusing name, the ring around downtown, that's the part that's fully funded. You know, it's very hard to understand what the objections are to that segment 3 because the majority, almost the top 10 congested spots in the state of Texas are right there, as well as it ranks pretty high in the top 15. It's about 8 spots in there. So from a safety issue, it's a no-brainer. When you think about hurricane evacuation, it's critical. And when you look at the displacement, it's Clayton homes. Those were projects that were damaged horribly during Harvey, most of the residents. So I think if you can go sit down, have those real talks again with people, you know, there's different objections people have, but when you start looking even at segment 3, which is funded, $3 billion, most dangerous stretch of highway in Texas, I think you can make progress. The whole thing's very exciting, but it's about 10 years to get it done, and it's actually having dialogue because Sheila Jackson, she's the one that actually filed the letter. That letter triggered the Title VI investigation. That's been going on for over a year. We were shovel ready a year ago. Because of that federal investigation, we're held up. So until DC changes, we have to get, right now Adrian Garcia's kind of straddling the fence, Mayor Turner's straddling the fence. They all know that at least part of this they want now, and trying to give them that opening to say, listen, I know you originally had concerns. They've adjusted the project. Take a look at it now. Thank you.
We'd all take 2 minutes on this topic.
These infrastructure projects, they take 10, 20, and 30 years to get. Again, in 97 and 98, I was testifying on behalf of our community to get qualified for the I-45 expansion. You have to get qualified, then you have to get funded. So those are two different mechanisms. You can have a bunch of projects like the deepening and widening of the port for $500 million every 5 years. Then you get authorized for it, and you still have to go fight for 200% of the authorized projects that are out there. This community went through decades of this effort. It wasn't a short term. It had hundreds and thousands of man hours that were applied to it. There are somewhere in the order of 70 different studies of one form or another, from social engineering, social impact, transportation, what it was going to do to neighborhoods, what the eminent domain effects were going to be. When I was testifying in 97 and 98 for that, this was a 1980s idea of Bob Lanier, our mayor here, when he was chairman of the Texas Highway Commission. That's how long it takes. The state basically gave us a check for $8 billion. We turned around and said, no, we want to renegotiate. TxDOT said, you can't renegotiate. We've got decades worth of plans here. And so we turned around and sued them. All right? This is not something, no county has ever done that before in the history of Texas. We get to the very end of the process, they say commence. As Alex said, we were shovel ready. The next day we could have started that. And although things are funded, there's nothing that's happening going forward until the whole project either gets funded or lost. And ladies and gentlemen, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, West Texas, and the Valley are all waiting for us to fumble this ball. We got to get that fixed, and on day one, by noon, I'm going to cancel that lawsuit and get our money back.
Rebuttal, 30 seconds.
I would just clarify, it's not a take it or leave it project. I've spent a lot of time talking with TxDOT. There's approvals along the way. We could end up with a sliver of it, nothing. Hopefully we get the whole thing. I think that's somewhere we're unified. We all want all investment. I'm extremely pro any investment in infrastructure. How do we efficiently move people and goods? But that's part of the bad messaging that the far left has said, that it was this throw it on you, take it or leave it. They've had dozens of meetings with community outreach, how to make this project better, and even revise plans over time. So that's where your job as an elected official is to go figure out how to make it best for our community, because TxDOT has bent over backwards to try to make this the best plan for our community. Thank you.
30 seconds, Vidal.
Well, Ms. Mueller, you came from California 6 years ago, and you don't know how the process works in Austin. It is
Have
a
you
take it or-
spoken with TxDOT? I'm
Excuse
just
me, are
curious.
you going to interrupt me? What's that outburst
Let him
about?
speak.
I have a
Let him
question.
Oh,
speak.
excuse me. This is not the way the process works, and she totally misunderstands. It is a take it or leave it. TxDOT is not going to negotiate with us for social prejudice index, period. We're about to lose that money. If she had been here longer or had been in a leadership role on any of this, she would understand that.
May I have a quick rebuttal?
No.
I just have a question. Have you spoken to anyone on TxDOT? I just spoke with several members of their team about 2 days ago. So I'm just curious where you got your information.
Okay, last comment.
I was testifying in front of TxDOT on the I-45 expansion and have watched it, and it caused me to run against Lena because I was the person that was partly responsible for getting that money here. I know more about this than you will ever know.
Okay, everybody, moving on to another transportation question. How do you, as a candidate, see the future of Harris County toll roads and the revenue they generate? I'll start with you, Vidal. 2 minutes.
We paid for our toll roads. They need maintenance, and that we need to collect. And part of what's been funding our county is we're using hundreds of millions of dollars from the Toll Road Authority to keep our property taxes low. So it has been a win-win for us over the years. We made the pledge when we voted these toll roads in that when they were paid for, that we would just have a sinking fund for maintenance over the years. We've gone beyond that, and we're now using it to keep our property taxes down. I am for an analysis of when and where we need to go with that model out there. If we don't have that revenue and we have the property tax rate sitting there hovering and we have a $300 million, $350 million hole, where are we going to make that up? Now, we're going to have a rational discussion as a community. It's a user fee. Remember, there's also 3 million trucks that are using our toll roads and our highways around here. So there might be a rational investigation on what we do with the commercial traffic that is using that. But we are beyond the promise we made to the taxpayers, and we're beyond the period. They're paid for, and now we need to have a rational discussion of what our community needs and balance it out with property tax relief.
Alex, 2 minutes.
You know, when Democrats talk about analyzing and studies, it really means they're going to raise your taxes. So when I talk about the toll road, I don't think we need to analyze and rationalize, and I certainly don't want to increase any tolls on our commercial trucking. Keeping our port competitive, attracting business, growing the tax base is how we make Harris County the heart, the economic engine. And that's a point where we very much disagree. I'm committed to lowering taxes. And no, our toll roads are not keeping our property taxes low. Our property taxes have been increasing every year. Everybody feels it. The politicians who've been running our county government don't have the courage. They're cowards. They're doing backdoor tax increases. You would raise your hand and get a rate. Instead, our appraisals have gone up 10% every year, 10%, and then this last year, 20%. And even with all that spending, they're deficit spending. Ed Emmett had a $3.5 billion budget, and we were building a surplus. We took in $4.5 billion. Lena's last year, we spent 7.6. We only took in 7.1. We lost population in that time. There's never enough money for what these people will spend. My commitment is that we will lower your real taxes, and that toll road money is actually going to go to roads. I think every person that drives a sedan in Harris County is brave. I don't know how you do that on our potholes. If our toll road money actually went towards roads, we could look like a first world country and not the banana republic they're turning us into. Thank you.
30 seconds.
Again, you just got here from California and haven't served 6 years ago. And when you sit on a port commission, when you sit on the port commission, You know what the user fees that are available to you. They get charged that at every one of the barber's cut, at the port terminals. It's a matter of adding a toll at the container ships. This is not anything that would cost the taxpayers any money, and it's a user fee that would help us keep our taxes low and use the toll road money for what it's supposed to.
30 seconds, Alex?
I just think it's interesting that he always likes to bring up that I was here only 6 years ago, because I wonder if you have a problem what I spent my 10 years doing in the military. Was that offensive to you when I was in Afghanistan? Because I didn't see you in Vietnam.
Moving on. Integrity and anti-corruption. Both of you are well versed on the current investigation into the alleged bid rigging and corrupt practices connected to the $11 million COVID communication contract. While Judge Lena Hidalgo and her inner circle of advisors have denied wrongdoing, what does the evidence presented so far tell you, and how would Harris County operate differently with you at the helm in terms of competitive bidding and transparency? I'll start with you, Alex.
Well, following the law is always a good place to start. So we're actually one of the counties that does have some very good practices in place, and that's why there's supposed to be a bid system. The problem where it failed and what violated the actual ethics of the procurement process is they were in negotiation, or that's what it appears through the search warrant, with one of the bidders. You can't have someone steering the RFP or the scope of work that's competing. That's a violation of policies. Now, yet today they announced that Lena now is personally involved in this search warrant. They're searching her records. That is a big difference. I would say at this point, between the number of people that are being investigated in her office and her personally, she's lost her moral authority to lead. I think that's one of the strengths of my background. I've never been indicated in a corruption scandal. You know, that's not something everyone can say up here. That I am a political outsider, and I'm very proud of the fact that I've earned my money in the private sector and through service in our military. Lena, there's enough here. She should step down. She held herself to beyond reproach. Clearly, that's not it. In regards to contracting in general, I believe in merit-based systems. When you start doing things for social equity, diversity, minority-owned businesses, it's an extra tax. Businesses have to get people so they comply, and it just creates a less great product for the end of the day taxpayer. My goal is transparency, the best person for the job. That's how we'll get the most bang for your buck for your taxpayer dollars.
2 minutes, Vidal.
As the only lawyer up here and the only federal prosecutor, when you look at this, whenever you look at a federal or a state investigation of a public official, they vet that very carefully. They do not come out with search warrants unless there's actually not just smoke, but there's fire, and they can prove it. We have the 4th set of search warrants now that are out. They're going to prove something against a set of people there. You can already see that Lena Hidalgo is trying to throw her staff under the bus, and now they're all pointing at each other, and you're starting to see different things. The question was, what would you do to stop that? Number one, I told you about day one on January 3rd. Somewhere during that day, we're going to ask for a review of the bidding process of every contract for the last 4 years. And we're going to ask for a report on that. And then we're going to see whether or not the committees that were supposed to be vetting them and the people that were looking and analyzing them actually did that. I would like to go back to the way we do it at the Port of Houston. At the Port of Houston, we film the committee meetings. They're on video. You can go back and look at any of the people that are presenting their bids or their evaluation committee. And then all public bids are opened with several hundred people in a public room at the same time. Let's go back to looking at the vendor process. Let's go back to having those committee considerations in public on video, and let's have public opening of all bids. We're spending $8 billion of your money, all right? You deserve to know where it's going. You deserve to know how it's spent, and you deserve to know what your return is on your investment out there. Let's get back to that, and I think that we'll be just fine. Thank you.
Alex, you want 30 more, or are we going to move on? Okay, Alex talked about this earlier, but I want to hear what Vidal has to say as well. On taxes, Harris County homeowners are getting hammered with higher valuations on their property and paying much higher tax bills as a result. If elected, what would you do to offer relief or at least hold the line? And I'll start with you, Vidal.
First of all, when we killed this bail bond settlement, we paid $100 million for that. Do you realize that you're paying $800? It used to be that the defendant, when he was out on bond, could have an ankle bracelet on so they could monitor him. You, the defendant, had to pay for that ankle bracelet. You today, because of all the multiple criminals that are out of jail on multiple bonds, and they gave them free ankle bracelets. We're paying $800,000 a month to the ankle bracelet company, and we paid $100 million for this Donnelly settlement. Dallas didn't. They were vindicated at the Fifth Circuit, and we've settled that. So you start, number one, $100 million up. You don't do things like tent hospitals in the NRG and spend all those tens of millions of dollars and didn't see one patient. You don't start with corruption contracts for $11 million. There is so much fat. They have doubled. Before Emmett left, it was under $4 billion. Now it's $8 billion. Folks, in 3 years and a couple months, they've doubled your budget. Let's get back to, with inflation and growth, we should be somewhere between $5 and $5.5 billion. Let's go in there, cut out the bureaucracies. We've hired way too many people, and in the first 100 days, we're going to figure out where they were, and we're going to give them their COBRA coverage and tell them to go home and find new health care.
Alex, 2 minutes on this issue.
So we are going to lower the tax rate, and the reason we can do this, what we've all spent talking about here, is crime's the number one issue. For the last few years, we've spent $1.1 billion. The forward 22 budget's going to go up to $1.3. Now, as Vidal has mentioned, almost $8 billion total budget. When you look at the general fund, that's roughly $3 billion. We're not talking about adding billions and billions of dollars to fund core services. We're talking about a few $100 million to get us where it's healthy. That's why you can cut all these programs, because we have an Office of Sustainability. We're in preschool education. You know, we drove a truck, and I say we, but our county government, through all these small businesses, by unnecessary lockdowns, we decided who was necessary, who wasn't. Right? We told people we're controlling your mandates. We did all of these things, and at the same time, we've raised the tax burden. You know, Lena created an Office of Economic Opportunity. Well, instead of that, why don't you let things be open, get more efficient regulations, increase our permitting time? Right now, it takes months for people to get permitted and do businesses. Those are all extra taxes. The point being, they're spending in all the wrong places. If you actually started prioritizing investment in infrastructure, law enforcement, and you cut out everything else, you'd have dramatic room to increase. If you look at the growth of the administrative state, we fight crime right now by bureaucrats. So we added David Berry at $400,000. We made him our administrative budget director. Now he has 5 deputies. Those each make $250,000. So when Lena and them deny over 80% of budget requests, we just hired a bureaucrat for $250,000. Now he's going to have his staff. And the layer cake goes on and on and on, and that's what's been so dangerous, is it's top-heavy, very expensive white-collar employees. Meanwhile, there's not enough money for our jails. There's not enough money for boots on the ground. We have to lower taxes. There's ample opportunity to cut the fat. Thank you.
Social programs. County Judge Lena Hidalgo and Democratic commissioners are funding an unprecedented number of new social programs, including millions for the legal defense of undocumented residents facing deportation. Hidalgo and her allies say these investments are essential and long overdue. What's your position? I'm going to start with Alex.
No.
We have 90,000 asylum illegal immigrants in our community right now. And we've turned around and we've given them free public housing. We've given them a cell phone. We're giving them food stamps. We're giving them access to Harris Health. Their kids are being educated in our schools. And we created a legal defense fund for them to have their asylum applications filed. Now, mind you, they're going to be here, and this is what's got the Latino community so incensed right now. They're percolating over there with bad people. We have a lot of drug cartels that came through. We had a lot of people from MS-13. They're sitting there and can't work. So they're in things that we're paying for, and things that every other family around here paid for and built their houses on, and built their families on. This is a real problem that we've got right now, and these social services, you don't do that. Why do we pay $30 million for early childhood education? There's 20 school districts in Harris County. We don't operate a single light or classroom. It's because they want to teach critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, your life doesn't, you're part of an original sin of our country, on and on and on. It's just wrong. We got to stop this spending and these critical left programs. We're about infrastructure. For 44 years, we had 3 county judges that kept us on that track. Let's get back to infrastructure only. There are a lot of social services that are available. Let the city do it. Let community churches do it. Let the philanthropy community do it. Let the State Bar of Texas and their Access to Justice Fund pay for those lawyers, not your infrastructure dollars. Let's get back to business.
And there's always going to be different issues, and what I think is helpful is to understand, how do you think, what is your philosophy of conservative governance? To me, conservative governance is when the government is only involved in the things that require collective action. Your security, you need law enforcement, you can't do that for yourself. Our roads, bridges, flood control, those are things that we need government involved. Where we don't need government seems to be where Lena wants to spend all of her time. She wants to tell your kids whether they should be vaxxed or not, whether to be maxed or not, whether your business should be open and closed. Individual decisions belong with individuals. We're not the Life of Julia. If you remember the Barack Obama cartoon, At Every Step of Your Life, that's what they've tried to recreate at our county level, and that's why I just said no, because it's not even a compromise. All of this growth of the state, if it wasn't there under Ed Emmett, it's a very high bar for why we should have it again. The number of departments we have added is almost too many to count. We've got at least 12 new departments and a host of new bureaucratic positions. We have to return power back to the people and get back to doing a few things and do it well. Thank you.
30 seconds? You're good. Okay. My role is nonpartisan, but I have a partisan question, so understand that. All these folks here, or a good many of them, might be concerned about how you spend your personal money as an indicator of values. And I think I've been asked to ask you if either candidate has contributed money to the other party at any given time. I will start with you, Vidal.
First, that question is coming around the social circles as an indicator of whether or not I'm a real Republican or not. Since 1980, I voted in every Republican primary. Since 84, I'm a delegate. 88, I'm a delegate to the Republican National Convention. I'm a vice chair. I've been appointed by every Republican governor to some agency, commission, or university board. I have given you can measure these things now, I've given over $200,000 to Republican candidates. I gave in that same time period less than $10,000 to Democrat office holders, not candidates. They were office holders, because we were in a position, there's a lot of people around that are trying to give us money, or you're trying to get something from them, that are Democrats. So whether I'm your port commissioner, I'm on the University of Houston Board of Regents, I'm on the Methodist Hospital Board, I'm the State Bar Chairman, whether I'm in a role out there that requires that we deal with the Democrat office holders in place. In the case of Lena Hidalgo, poof, in 2018, she wakes up and lightning strikes and she's the county judge. Me and most of the Greater Houston Partnership Board made a business decision to at least have some access to her and hope that we could have some influence on her to be able to drive the county car. She quickly disappointed on us. These are business decisions that you're making for the community. And at the same time that Donald Trump supported Hillary Clinton before she disappointed him. Same thing with Lena Hidalgo. She disappointed all of the business community, and now we're running against her to take her out. I'm here to do that.
Go ahead, Alex.
So I've only given to Republicans, and I just want to know, when you were writing that check to Lena, did you feel a little bad about it?
30-second rebuttal.
Let's talk about that. My California, tourist here comes here, and 6 years later, 6 years later, facts are hard, aren't they? All right? She comes here and is voted in one Republican primary before this election season, never written a check to a Republican or a party or any cause, has not served on any organization's board, has zero footprint in our community, including giving to any Republicans. She said once in response, "Oh no, I gave the $200 cash to Dan Crenshaw." Madam, that's illegal for you to do that. And Dan is not stupid enough to take $200 cash. You have not given to any Republican at all whatsoever. And you've not voted for Republicans.
30-second rebuttal.
Yes, so disagree. You can pull up on FEC and you can see all my donations. That's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact, so you should get your facts correct. I was a registered Republican as a teenager in California. That is a unicorn, and I happen to be a bit of a unicorn and exceptional in many ways. But I have never voted for a Democrat, and I've never given a dollar to a Democrat. And I don't measure my service or worth to a community by being appointed to partisan boards. I am not a political insider. If you want the establishment, it's right there. I'm an outsider. I want meaningful change for our community.
In a second. Okay, we're coming to the end of our questions, and then we're going to let the candidates close in a substantial way. I call this the tiebreaker question. And I'm talking to both these two candidates who I respect, and I assure you there are plenty of voters who admire you in this room. They respect you both, but ultimately can choose just one on May 24th. With that understanding, what quality or qualification should be the tiebreaker for these voters? And I'll start with you, Vidal.
Electability. You can be qualified, you can be experienced, but you have to be electable. And I'm just curious that my opponent just said that I was part of the insiders. Her supporters are the River Oaks crowd. Her next fundraiser is at Ned Holmes' house, right next door to River Oaks Country Club. Richard Weekley supports her. She has the ultimate insider group right now that's supporting her. It's kind of curious that she made that statement. So, electability. This race is about a race for the Latino community's heart and soul. It's up for grabs right now. The Democrats abandoned the Latino vote. There's 3.1 million on the Texas border. There's 3.2 million in our area. Latinos have switched in the two biggest counties, 2 out of the 4 biggest counties on the border. Right now, we are fighting for the soul. AOC came out and said 4 weeks ago now, you keep Lena Hidalgo in there, she locks in Houston as deep blue, and there's 5 big counties become that, and she's your next governor in 2026. That's what's going on here right now. You got to have somebody that's been in my community, que puede hablar español a ellos y para ellos. If you can't talk to them, you can't talk for them. I've been out there. I've been in every single Latino organization, chaired it, been honored over there. I was Mama Ninfa's personal lawyer. I filed a lawsuit against the city that got the 2 extra seats from 14 to 16 for the Hispanic community. I am well known out there. I am going to represent my community, and I'm going to spend the next 4 years after I'm elected. We need 5 to 8% of that vote. And electability is a very strong third component. You can be qualified. She has no experience here, but she is totally unelectable. And in my closing statements, I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Alex, qualification or quality that should be the tiebreaker?
No, the tiebreaker should be who can lead with integrity and honor. That's what's been missing in our county government. There's corruption at multiple levels.
Hold your applause. Hold your applause, please.
But what I would say about electability, because this has come up quite a few times, is I am second generation Hispanic. I am not fluent. I've never purported to be. I actually think it's a great thing you are, making sure my kids are. Bulk of my family is fluent. I unfortunately am not. But that's not a disqualification to lead, right? I've been able to get today, Bienvenido has endorsed me, Hispanic organization, Libertad, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan, and Cuban refugees. People get excited about liberty. That's what we haven't had. We have not had freedom in our local government. I'm also proud to have the support of Houston Police Officers Spanish-speaking organization. Again, that wasn't because I looked a certain way or sounded a certain way. It was because they trusted me to lead our county. What you need to understand, and we all have to think about, is this is the third largest county. Over 150 languages spoken. When you start dissecting and disintegrating people, tearing them down, that's divisive language. And when you donate to Democrats, you start sounding like them, and that's their game. They want to say, I want so many quotas of you, so many of this. How are we separate and different? What I want to do is get people fired up about good conservative governance. And that's what we did. I ran a grassroots campaign, and we got people excited and motivated, ran a real ground game. Now, you mentioned about having the River Oaks set behind me. They were not part of my campaign before, but it's funny, most of them have been on boards with you, and they didn't choose you. What does that say about your character?
Okay, here we go. 3 minutes to close.
No, let me respond to that, Greg.
Okay, take 30 seconds.
Isn't it funny, we had 9 people in this race. 5 of the 9 people she got 71% of the vote did not vote for her. Most, 66% of that 71 is with me. Ask yourself why. They saw us at various different functions, dozens of functions together. They saw, and I have the endorsement of 5, and the 6th one is coming, and at least he says he's going to vote for me. Ask yourself why. This is not about the River Oaks set. She's the insider on this thing, and it's time, and I'll close on my 3 minutes.
Okay. Alex, do you want 30 seconds more, or are you ready to close?
We can just move to close.
Okay. Does anybody remember who started this thing?
I had opened.
Who did? You opened? You ready to close?
I'll close after her.
If we're going to have to flip a coin, is it? I think.
He goes first. Yeah, it rotates. I close, I spoke first.
All right. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and close.
Yep.
Quiet, please. Let's hear them. Quiet, please.
Thank you all for being here, including, I really do want to thank even the people who are not supporting me. This is about beating Lena Hidalgo. And down the road, if Alex is our nominee, I'm going to support her. She's already said in public that she would support me. There's only 3 people that are going to, one of 3 people are going to gavel in on January 3rd. I think I'm the most electable. I certainly have the qualifications. I certainly have the experience. But I want to get back to this electability issue. I think we're going to need 5 to 8 points of the Latino community. And if we don't, the Democrats are going to be, excuse me, in the back, I'm sorry. If we don't get that set up for this fall, the Democrats this is a national race for them too. You can see AOC, that she's raising money all around the country right now for this. And I think that there's an issue regarding, this is the future of the Republican Party too, is the 3.2 million that are sitting right here. We're going to have a sustained effort to bring in the Latino community. And Ms. Mueller has brought into this campaign, she doesn't speak Spanish, but she's Hispanic, and she is the granddaughter of Alejandro del Moral, and she respects him and learned from him. My problem is that the Democrats are going to find this picture of Castro to her grandfather as a compatriot in the communist revolution. And they're going to use this against her. And in the Latino community, There's no more hatred than communist Castro. And this is inscribed, this is a picture that's inscribed to her grandfather as a compatriot of the revolution. It's right here. It's on the internet. It was sent to us just in the last day or so. Democrats have this, and they're going to use it.
Quiet, please.
You think you think they're playing games, the Democrats? There's not going to be a single way that a communist Castro grandfather that gave her all her inspiration is going to be elected from the Latino community. And that you have to look at electability. And if you don't, we're going to lose this race. We haven't won this race by any chance. No matter the wind behind our back, no matter how bad Lena is, we have to be in a position where we can take that seat back. Ronald Reagan said, nominate the most qualified individual who can win. Ask yourself, who can beat Lena this fall? And ask yourself, who's qualified who's qualified in the general election to be able to go after the Latino community? I'm the only person that can beat her. I look forward to your support down the road. Thank you.
So this evening, I'll be uploading an award from the city of Los Angeles honoring my grandfather. He led the opposition against Franco, a dictator and a fascist. For that, he was put in a concentration camp in Vichy, France. He gave up everything, his family. That's why I still have family in Spain. This man chooses to spit on my grandfather's grave. He took in people from the Bay of Pigs. He fought Fidel, and that's why he's been honored. To say that my grandfather is a communist is the most insulting thing. You are the one that has supported and donated to communists. My family spent a life
Quiet, please.
fighting against strong government, and the fact that this is your attack, that's pathetic. You do not unite and get people excited. We have to fight Lena. She truly is a communist. But your desperation, the best thing you can get on me is whatever this photo is. My grandfather started, and these are his supporters. What I guess I'd like to just take a minute back. At least you're finally starting to say some of the things your surrogates have said. I've seen the way you've run your campaign, and I don't respect it, and I certainly don't respect what you just did with my grandfather.
Quiet, please.
Now,
Hold your applause.
back to electability and the real question at hand.
Hold your applause.
The Hispanic population, or Latino, whatever definition he wants to use, they're all running towards conservative governance. Why? Because we're offering a better way of life. And it's not just them, it's everyone. And if you look at what happened with Cy-Fair flipping its school board, you look at Virginia and Youngkin, and then you look at Bridget Wade getting an HISD, it wasn't one particular demographic. You know what it was? It was parents. Parents realized that their kids are what are under threat. And I happen to be a parent of young kids, and I'm uniquely situated to activate that base. But I don't want to pick one minority group over the other. I want to bring everyone. 150 languages in our county we're going to bring to our party because we're offering the better way of life. I hope you earn your vote. Thank
Hold
you.
your applause, please. Hold your applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a hand for our two great candidates.
Thank you. Thank you. At ease. Please, have a seat. You know, the one thing I would like to remind everybody that we're on the same team. We are. And let me remind you that here in Tomball, you are in the reddest part of Harris County, I can assure you. This is Jack Cagle and Tom Ramsey's turf. So, the one thing that I will say and that I totally despise is bickering among two great Republican candidates that have the same goal, and that is to turn our Harris County back to red. we appreciate the courage that both of them have in taking on that task. We all know what Harris County has turned into. What I'd like to remind you of as well is that our Paracadarian Club here in Tomball, we endorse no candidates, but we are merely here to bring you information so that you can make a proper, intelligent choice as to who you would like to vote for. What kind of example are we choosing for our kids here? At our meetings, we invite young Republicans to our meetings. We need to give them a great example as to how Republicans act. I, again, want to thank you guys for being here. We will have our next meeting here May the 5th. We meet in this place, in this space here, each month. If you would like to get more information about that, you can sign up in the back there. We've got information back there also if you would like to join our club as well. But thank you guys for coming out. We really appreciate it. Have a great evening, and again, applause for these two great candidates. Thank you.